Vladimir Putin is afraid. Russia's president would never show it, of course. He's far too concerned about maintaining the strongman image that has served him so well as the leader of his country. But behind the scenes, Putin's paranoia has led to him making some crazy moves that stretch beyond mere self-preservation. You can take the man out of the KGB, it seems, but you can't take the KGB out of the man. And right now, Putin is terrified of one thing: Ukrainian drones that can reach Moscow. Putin fears death is coming as Ukrainian drones zero in for the kill, and he's come up with a remarkably convoluted solution to the problem. The solution, United 24 media reported on November 12th, is to create a series of offices across Russia. On its own, that wouldn't seem strange. Leaders the world over need access to offices across their countries so they can quickly respond when situations arise. The difference between those types of situation rooms and Putin's offices is simple. The Russian leader's offices are practically identical. Why? Because Putin never wants anybody to know where he really is at any given time. United 24 media says that the discovery of Putin's identical offices was made by an investigative outlet named Sistema, which worked alongside Radio Free Europe, Radio Liberty, and Current Time to find out what Putin is doing. According to Sistema, Putin's offices are informally called Beige Rooms, and they're designed to exacting standards so that Russia's leader has full control over them at all times. The outlet says that it's discovered at least 3 of these beige rooms during its investigation, and notes that there are several clues to look for when snooping for one of Putin's identical offices. Door handles, decorative lines, and even folders are among those clues, as you'll find out in a moment when we explain how Sistema discovered the existence of the fake offices. United 24 media adds more, stating that the beige rooms all have the exact same layout, wall paneling, and furniture. To the uninformed observer, these 3 offices would all appear to be one, and that is what Putin is counting on. He's created these offices so that official footage released from these meetings makes it appear as though he's always in the same place. He isn't. Based on Sistema's findings, Putin could at any given time be in an office that is in Sochi, Valdai, or Novo-Ogaryovo. You would never know which based on official pictures. That is by design. But if these offices are so identical down to minor details like the number of pencils placed on a table, how did Sistema even discover that they existed in the first place? Sistema explained its method. The organization looked at hundreds of publications involving Putin and his officers over the last decade, including dozens of hours of footage shot as part of the Moscow Kremlin-Putin TV program. With the footage and photos compiled, what followed was untold hours of painstaking detective work. The investigative organization examined official government procurement documents and building plans to determine that there were several of the exact same design of office built in Russia. It also looked into the travel records of Russian state media journalists to discover where they were and why, allowing the organization to put together even more pieces. It's through this detailed examination that Sistema started to spot inconsistencies. The original office, upon which the other 2 are based, is located in Novo-Ogaryovo. It's also in this location that Putin claims to be whenever he allows the release of footage of him or his cronies working in his supposed main office. However, the first hint Sistema discovered of the forgeries existing takes us back to December 2020. On that date, the host of Moscow Kremlin-Putin, Pavel Zarubin, stood outside what was supposed to be Novo-Ogaryovo. Tugging lightly at the door handle, Zarubin said, "It's reasonable to assume that a significant portion of the preparation for the press conference took place in this very room." Perhaps it was reasonable to assume that, but the assumption would be wrong. The next shot of the program shows Putin tugging at what was supposed to be the same handle. Both the original shot and the footage of Putin are labeled as being from Novo-Ogaryovo, which the Kremlin reinforces to leave viewers with no doubt about where Putin is located. It's also clear that Russian state TV wanted people to believe that the reporter and Putin were in the same building at the same time, with the footage being captured having been shot live. However, the door handles that the Putin-friendly program placed so much focus upon ended up giving the game away. If you look closely, you can see that Putin and Zarubin are opening 2 different, although outwardly very similar doors. On one, the handle is located slightly higher, on the other, slightly lower. Current Time says in its report on the Sistema discovery. One of these offices was a replica. The door handle in what was later discovered to be Putin's Sochi office follows the line of the slab joints that are on the adjacent wall. The Novo-Ogaryovo office's handle is slightly below this line. A seam on the wall behind Putin is also noticeably lower than the same seam in the office from which Zarubin reports. There are other giveaways. There are different legs on the TV stands in both offices, along with different numbers of ventilation holes and different writing pads, Current Time adds. All of this is viewable in photographs shared by the outlet, and it's all evidence that mounts to Putin having several offices that he's trying to make look identical. These sorts of discrepancies between offices occur regularly among the 700 reports that Sistema analyzed. One day a new renovation is seen, only for a report published a few days later to feature a different renovation or a return to what we'd seen before the new renovation was completed. A publication named Proect even reported on the duplicate offices back in 2020, leading to the Kremlin issuing an official denial while stating that all claims of duplicates amount to an information attack. Such a furious response shows us that Putin absolutely does not want people to know that he has near-identical offices in several locations. Then there's the third office. Based in Valdai, this is the office in which Putin held meetings related to Russia's Winter Cherry Hotel fire in March 2018. That fire killed at least 64 people, 41 of whom were children in Siberia, and it became a national emergency. Perhaps Putin's fear of the anger from his people for allowing such a tragedy to happen led him to decide to avoid his original office and instead use the Valdai duplicate. But how do we know this fake office wasn't the same one revealed in Sochi? Sistema says more differences separate the Valdai location from its two compatriots. For one, a scene running across the wall behind the office's main table is a touch higher than that seen in both the Novo Ogariovo and Sochi locations. There's also a thermostat switch in the center of the panel near the door at Valdai. In the other two offices, that switch is placed off-center toward the panel's bottom left corner. There are also differences in the colors of the tables in all three offices, and the Valdai location has the same slightly higher door handle as the Sochi office. There's too much evidence mounting up. As much as the Kremlin might deny it, Putin clearly has duplicate offices all around Russia. These three identical offices are just the ones for which there is evidence. United 24 media claims that Putin's penchant for performative office shenanigans started in 2014, which is the same year that Russia annexed Crimea. However, the lying intensified during the COVID-19 pandemic, as Putin wanted his people to believe that he was isolating himself in his Novo Ogariovo office. The footage Sistema examined revealed that he wasn't, as he was more likely in the Sochi or Valdai locations. So you can add breaking his own COVID-19 restrictions to Putin's massive list of crimes. Putin's fake offices have become so important to him that their creation and use are now matters of Russian process. The investigation concludes that the Kremlin's use of cloned offices and false location reporting has become an institutionalized practice, United 24 media reports. This system, Sistema argues, now shapes state logistics and protocol around maintaining the personal security and psychological comfort of the Russian leader. It seems that Putin is regularly bouncing between his three near-identical offices since he launched his Ukraine invasion. The statement about his psychological comfort reveals why. We'll get into that in a moment. If Sistema's report isn't enough to convince you that Putin not only has duplicate offices, but he constantly lies about where he is at any given time, then a report by Pamfletti offers more evidence. On September 13th, it revealed that it had spoken to a man named Gleb Karakulov, once a high-ranking Kremlin official who served as part of Putin's elite personal security service. The 35-year-old Karakulov had defected when Putin invaded Ukraine. Given his role, he would have been attached to Putin's hip for as long as he served, which would give him all of the insight he needed into the Russian leader's paranoid playbook. Karakulov confirmed the existence of Putin's identical offices, claiming that they're part of a web of security systems designed to prevent Putin from being assassinated. He also revealed details that the Sistema report overlooked or thought were irrelevant, such as the fact that Putin keeps all of his duplicate offices as sparsely furnished as possible to minimize the risk of discovery. Each office also has 10 perfectly sharpened pencils that are placed next to a computer screen and keyboard. Plus, each has 3 white telephones on Putin's desk, all stationed to his left, along with a microphone used when Putin is holding conversations. Tellingly, there are no windows in any of the 3 offices. Having a view to the outside would be a clear giveaway that Putin isn't in the office he claims to be in. There were times when I knew he was in Sochi. The TV and the news showed him leading a meeting in Novo Ogariovo, Karakulov tells Pamfletti. So I asked a colleague in Sochi, has he left already? No, he said, he's still here. I think this is an attempt to confuse, firstly, foreign intelligence, and secondly, so there are no assassination attempts, Karakulov concludes. Putin's paranoia goes so deep that he even has his security officials fly planes or send presidential convoys to places that Putin has no intention of visiting. It's all misdirection. But as clever as the plan may seem, small and some might argue, avoidable mistakes have given the game away. As for why Putin is going to such great lengths to conceal his location, Karakulov's comments indicate that Russia's leader is terrified of assassination attempts and foreign agents learning Russia's secrets. However, the Ukraine war has given him another reason to fear for his life. It's a reason that has led to him making 29 of his 30 public appearances at his Valdai clone office rather than the office he's supposed to be working from in Novo Ogariovo between January and September of 2025. And it's also the reason why that Valdai office is reportedly surrounded by 14 air defense systems, including 13 Pantsir missile systems, as United 24 media reports. Putin is terrified of Ukraine's drones, and he has every reason to be. According to United 24 media, one of the main reasons that Putin is now using his Valdai clone office is that it's surrounded by forests. It's a lot easier to conceal air defense systems in the trees than it is to hide them in the urban setting that surrounds the Novo Ogariovo original. Valdai has become one of Russia's most fortified sites specifically because Putin knows that Ukraine has long-range drones that are capable of evading air defenses, as long as the positions of those defenses are known. What this means is that Putin is hiding away at a residence that is situated roughly halfway between Moscow and St. Petersburg, rather than working in his country's capital like practically all other leaders would do. Putin knows that Ukraine would love to take him out with one of its drones, and he knows that Ukraine has the drones to do it. The country's FP-1 long-range drone alone has a range of 1,600 kilometers, according to Militani in a May 2025 report. That amounts to about 994 miles, which is more than enough to place the Novo Ogariovo office at risk. That office's urban location also means that Putin can't easily hide air defenses that can shoot down drones, meaning the position is even more vulnerable. Ukraine has also placed Moscow under drone siege several times since it developed its long-range drone capabilities. The most recent of these sieges came toward the end of October, when Ukraine sent drones into Moscow on 3 consecutive nights, forcing the closure of airports while sending a message to Putin that he will never be safe if he stays in his nation's capital city. Ukraine used these Moscow-focused drones to destroy military and industrial assets, The Guardian said on October 29th. You can guarantee some of those drones would have targeted Putin if he hadn't run away from Russia's most important city. Beyond tricking Ukraine, Putin's fake offices also seem to be an attempt to fool his own people. As far as the average Russian learns from state TV, Putin works from his Novo Ogariovo office. That's Putin's supposed seat of power, and TV stations regularly claiming that this is where he is could be designed to lend a sense of security to a population that Putin is trying to control. Your president is hard at work, these reports are saying, and he's in the same office in which he always operates because he isn't afraid of Ukraine. That's a complete lie. But propagating that lie can feed into the Kremlin's attempts to convince its own people that Ukraine's constant drone strikes in Russian territory aren't as dangerous as they are. If Putin is unafraid of Ukraine, then the Russian people shouldn't be afraid either. And if those people aren't scared of Ukraine, they have no reason to call Putin to end his brutal invasion. Still, it's fear that informs all of the security decisions that Putin makes since he invaded Ukraine. And the duplicate offices in at least 3 locations are just a hint at Putin's paranoia. There are many others, some of which date back to before the Ukraine invasion began. Karakulov, who you'll remember as the former member of Putin's security service, claims that Putin always travels without a device that many of us now consider essential. CBC reports the Russian defector is claiming, "I've never seen him with a mobile phone. All the information he receives is only from people close to him. That is, he lives in a kind of information vacuum." That vacuum can't be helpful to Putin when he's trying to figure out what's happening in Russia or Ukraine. Surrounding himself with lackeys who only tell him what he wants to hear is likely leading Putin to fall out of touch. Other signs of Putin's paranoia are more bombastic than even a series of near-identical offices built to trick people into thinking he's in one location rather than the other. In October 2024, The Independent reported that Putin had made the strange decision to demolish the Bocharov-Ruchi mansion, which is located in Sochi and overlooks the Black Sea. Once one of Putin's favored vacation destinations, the mansion had apparently become a no-go zone for Putin once Ukraine ramped up its drone and missile strikes against Russia's Black Sea fleet. Seemingly fearing for his life, Putin had his beloved palace bulldozed to the ground, presumably to prevent Ukraine from targeting it. Before that demolition, which appears to have happened sometime around May 2024, Putin hadn't visited the holiday home for 7 months before October 2024. Putin once spent 37 days per year at the mansion, often in the company of his secret lover, Alina Kabayeva. Now the mansion is razed and Putin seems to have decided to destroy it before allowing Ukraine to enjoy a propaganda victory by filming one of its drones taking the holiday home out. Some of Putin's security measures make a lot more practical sense. Pamphletti reveals that Putin has been wearing bulletproof vests for every one of his public appearances since at least 2023, per a report by the Moscow Times. That measure was taken on recommendation by Putin's Presidential Security Service, and it makes plenty of sense for a man who appears to believe that everybody is out to get him. The Moscow Times also revealed in the summer of 2024 that Putin's personal security service had been ramped up since Ukraine gained the ability to strike Moscow, The Kremlin takes Vladimir Putin's security very seriously. He is protected by a whole army of visible and invisible guards, one unnamed official told the outlet. Again, all of this makes sense. It certainly seems more practical than creating fake offices and destroying beloved holiday homes. However, Putin's security measures take a sharp turn back toward the bizarre amidst reports that he's so paranoid about anybody finding out anything about him that he took a certain type of suitcase to his August meeting with US President Donald Trump in Alaska, a poop briefcase. Several outlets reported on this strange suitcase, though it must be noted that many were tabloids rather than respected outlets. The Economic Times summed the story up in an August 18th report, where it claimed that Putin is having his security detail mop up and store his excrement in highly guarded suitcases to prevent foreign powers from using his waste to determine what, if any, physical ailments he has. The same outlet says that reporters from the French outlet Paris Match claim that Putin has had this system in place as far back as his 2017 visit to France. He also reportedly uses a portable toilet rather than on-site facilities during his foreign visits, again out of fear that somebody somewhere might learn anything about him thanks to his waste. This last security measure should be taken with a grain of salt, considering the sources. However, it's clear that everything we've discussed in this video paints the picture of Putin as a paranoid maniac who is so terrified of the consequences of his actions in Ukraine that he does everything he can think of to avoid them. For all the power that Putin has, the revelation of his secret clone offices shows us that he is a man who lives every day of his life in fear. And he should, because if he stays in one place too long, Ukraine's drones will come to meet him. As his paranoia consumes him, Putin also has to deal with something he never expected. He's running out of time to defeat Ukraine. His attritional strategy is collapsing around him amidst pressure from external countries, and the deadline for a Russian victory draws near. Find out more in our video, and remember to subscribe to The Military Show for more coverage of Putin's strange antics. And thank you for watching.